Simon Israel reporting. Well, joining me now, Maajid Nawaz, he's the Assistant Secretary General for the Muslim Council of Britain, and Maajid Nawaz is Chairman of Quilliam, a counter-terrorism think tank. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Maajid. I mean, 20 years. For 20 years, he was preaching hatred until late last year. Why did it take so long for him to get convicted?
I think the CPS will have to answer that directly, to be honest, but many people are asking that question. The first thing that we heard when he was arrested and when the charge was brought is, thank God, from many Muslims across the country. Finally, this has happened. People have been asking, why hasn't this been done a lot earlier? Some people have been saying things like they think that people thought he might be seen as a martyr, but he wasn't. He was someone who was thrown out of mosques across the UK. He was someone who was hated by Muslims across the UK, and he was someone who had no real place within the Muslim community.
So was this a failure of the authorities?
We have to look at the details at play here. In reality, he has been found guilty of inciting violence, and that's something that we hope will be used to tackle those who try and go against the values that our nation is so proud to be a part of.
Maajid Nawaz, why did it take so long?
I think there's been a failure culturally, to be honest, in our country. For too long, we developed a culture of tolerating the most intolerable forms of extremism in the name of multiculturalism and free speech. Anjem Choudary's conviction has come finally to symbolize perhaps the end of that era, but a lot more needs to be done. I fear the cat has already been let out the bag. We saw in your short film that he's been traveling across Europe and set up branches, and there are thousands of people now supporting the message he was allowed to preach.
Maajid Nawaz, has the community been too tolerant of people like him?
As I said, he's been literally thrown out of mosques in Luton and across the country. There's a reason.
But he was still preaching until late last year.
Outside on street corners. That's the reality of where he was allowed to be. In reality, he didn't have that much of support within Muslim communities. But what happened was that many places within the media were allowing him and providing him a loudspeaker to spread his hatred, which he wasn't able to do within mosques across the UK.
Did your organisation condemn him?
Yes, straight up, and said very clearly.
When did they start?
Over 10 years ago. The Muslim Council of Britain, for example, called very clearly, why was the Today programme calling someone like this onto the stage to publicise his hatred, to publicise his view? And in reality, we've seen today, the BBC have talked to him about being an Islamic preacher, And this is someone who is outside the scope of any real mainstream Muslim organisation or country.
Even now, when he goes to jail, the organisation that he's managed to set up, and we saw in that graphic there in Simon Israel's piece, it has tentacles that reach into Europe, into Indonesia. That organisation is in place. That is his legacy, isn't it? Can that be undone?
Well, this is going to take an entire generation or more, and I think it's accurate, as my colleague has been saying, to say that Muslims have condemned Anjem for a while. The problem is that even Al-Qaeda condemns ISIS. Our bar shouldn't be set that low. And as you're alluding to in your question, the ideas that Anjem has preached for so long and has gotten away with have grown tentacles, have spread across Europe and even in this country. Look, up to 2,000 British-born and raised Muslims don't just get up and join ISIS in a vacuum. The fact is there are many caliphate-supporting Muslims now in our communities, and all of us need to do a lot more to start challenging those ideas.
So will his conviction, will that in itself make any difference to the growing tide of extremism?
Well, it's symbolic, and so, of course, it's a good thing, and it means that symbolically the tide perhaps is beginning to turn. But not just Muslim communities, by the way. When I said cultural failure, I mean our communities per se need to start coming to terms with the fact that these forms of extremist ideas have grown a home in some cases across our communities. Many people convert to this ideology. So all of us need to start challenging this form of extremism by standing together and saying enough is enough.
Even from jail, he could be in a position to carry on radicalising his followers, couldn't he?
Perhaps. We hope that that isn't the case. And obviously, in reality, when he's by himself in jail, if there isn't that public support for him, because that doesn't really exist, then that idea will not spread. And we need to ensure that we are all together standing up against this kind of crazy rhetoric and something that doesn't represent anyone across the UK.
But his speeches are online, his memory is there, his legacy is there. Osama bin Laden was able to carry on radicalising people from captivity where no one had a clue where he was.
Of course, and this is why I say that ideas such as Islam being enforced anywhere in the world in today's day and age name the caliphate, these ideas must be challenged by organizations such as the MCB. Ideas such as in an ideal Islamic state, when all the Sharia conditions are met, it's okay to cut the hand of the thief, or it's okay to punish the adulterer. These ideas must be, in principle, opposed by our community leadership across the board. It's not just about bin Laden. It's not just about Anjem Choudary.
It's about the community.
It's about the ideas that have spread, the ideology I call Islamism, that has spread within our communities.
We've run out of time, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Maajid Nawaz, Anjem Choudarys, thanks for coming in. Jackie.